That's coming to you, doctors. That's coming to you, doctors, IJ and GH. And I'm allowed to say that. That's their names, IJ and GH. And their names are being released across, all kinds of, everyone knows who they are, for Pete's sake, in British Columbia. So this is a joke. This publication ban is a joke.
The judge is saying that if you want to have a lesser sentence, if I find you guilty in April, then it'd be good for you to clean that stuff up. Well, how can you do that if he's in prison? So I asked that he be released for a day or two. I read that people with heinous crimes that are about to go to jail for years are allowed a day off to go and say goodbye to their kids. But they didn't do that. And it's an example of technicalities and codes of law governing human nature, overriding temperance and that sort of stuff. There was nothing preventing this judge, had he wanted to tell him he can go for 2 days, come back, and in the meantime try to fix the problems.
Drea Humphrey here with Rebel News, standing in front of the Vancouver law courts again. We are going to hear what is to happen to the man who has no face, no name, and no voice due to publication bans and other restrictions that have been placed upon him. Justice Taman will be ruling on whether or not CD has to remain in jail until his trial next month, or if he's going to be out here getting interviewed by us at Rebel News. You can catch the full report on the first day on this, the hearing that just took place a few days ago at rebelnews.com. If you haven't already caught that, just a brief explanation of what's happened here is CD has been accused of breaching a publication ban, and in particular on a funding page to help with his legal fees for the stand that he has been taking to warn parents about how powerless Canadians are when it comes to having concerns about your child receiving treatment to transition if you don't think that is the right thing for your child. And one thing in particular was on the GoFundMe page, there were allegations made that CD had his full name as well as a photo on there of himself, and also linked to some other articles, including a report that allegedly included a certificate with his child's full birth name on it. So we're going to go into the courthouse today and see what happens. He's not getting out. This is insane. CD will remain in jail at least until mid-next month when his trial is to be heard. Justice Taman did point out that a big factor in his ruling today is the fact that between the time CD's warrant was issued and the time that they allowed him to come and surrender during court earlier this week, that the photo of CD and the name of CD was not taken down. Apparently that was a big factor in the ruling today. Now, also, apparently, the Crown brought forth new information that Justice Taman says was not part of his consideration, but he did want to express a clear warning to CD, which was that apparently there was another report done out of U.S. Now, the publication ban does not apply to journalists in the U.S., but allegedly there is some information, private medical information of the child and the full name, and of course these doctors that go around transitioning children all the time but for some reason don't want people to know about it, that was disclosed in those reports. And Justice Taman said CD will have to remain in jail, but get this, if CD does not do absolutely everything in his power to have that report taken down from another country from behind bars, then come his trial, if that report is still up, it will weigh heavily on how long or how severely CD will be punished. This is insane. We never should have gotten to this point, and I'm sorry that it's happening, and it appears this is a stand CD is willing to take. As you see in the previous report at rebelnews.com, CD did feel that they may put him in and at least until his next trial.
This is my opinion. I think they're going to hold me up until the trial in April, because what they've been trying to do is somehow paint me as a criminal, and they haven't been able to do it. Carrie Lynn has been quite successful at keeping me out of the prisoner's docket, as an example. And they need to somehow cement the fact that I am a criminal. And what better way than to arrest me and hold me and drag me out there in a nice orange jumpy on April 12th, right?
For now, we're going to speak with CD's lawyer and also Laura Lynn Tyler Thompson, who has been very close to this matter, and I'll get her to explain how. All right, I'm here with Laura Lynn Tyler Thompson. Now, Laura Lynn is directly connected to this in some way, especially since this is a matter of breaching a publication ban. For people who haven't seen our reports on you in the past, do you want to just briefly explain what happened to you with some of these bans in this case?
Well, this has been a very interesting subject to me for many years. 3 years ago, today actually, SOGI came up. Sexual orientation and gender identity. That is taught to kids in school. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of transgender books in Canadian schools that tell kids that they can change their gender. And so when I found out about that, I began to speak on it. My fear was that one day a child who maybe had some emotional or mental health problems would be affected by that, and they would believe these books. And in fact, if they were unscientific, statements, but that you can be a boy inside a girl's body. But here we have seen the fruition of that. Everything that we feared has happened. A father, we can only call him CD, has now had his daughter transitioned by the courts, by activist doctors, activist lawyers, activist judges, activist social workers, and activist teachers, all colluded to keep information from the parents until it was actually really too late. And so I got involved when I thought that this was important enough to speak publicly. Even though there was a publication ban, I saw that the father was willing to tell the story, and so I decided I would also speak. Now, my role has stepped back. I'm no longer really in trouble that I can see, and I try to stay out of trouble. I'm going to try to keep you out of trouble.
Don't we
too.
all?
Yeah, because at any moment, you could say the name or whatever. But this is of immense importance. Today, the Justice Taman spoke about protecting the daughter. At this point, now he doesn't call her the daughter, protecting the child. My position is that child should have been protected 5 years ago. When all of this began, that's when protection needed to happen. I also know for a fact that this child and the parent wanted to go public with all of this, a year and a half, 2 years ago. They wanted to tell their story. So protecting the child at this point, I don't know the validity of that. I know that the other side would want to make that the big issue. Here's the real issue, is protecting the names of the doctors who are activist doctors transitioning thousands of children over the course of their tenure as doctors. One doctor in particular bragging about transitioning 500 children, and many of those in the Ministry of Children and Families right here in British Columbia, many of them First Nations. That's what everyone wants to keep silent. That this is an issue that we just want to cover up in society. It's an issue, basically that the Liberals and the NDP and, many people support, and it's a big problem. Today, I think there was a significant win in that Justice Taman will hear from experts. Dr. Quinton Van Maren, he is a world-renowned expert on gender dysphoria. Hopefully, he will be here to present or by video. That's a very good thing. But it's only on penalty. So once Justice Taman has ruled that the father is guilty, then we'll bring in some expert testimony to show why. Well, why did this father do it? Because this is happening worldwide. The sudden onset of gender dysphoria in youth, that's happening worldwide. Why? Because we've been telling them since kindergarten that they can change their gender. Now, courts in the UK, they're making laws, and they're changing the laws. Across the world, laws are being put in place where they're not going to continue to change the gender of minors. Now we have cases where kids who transitioned are detransitioning, and they are now suing those same doctors. And that's coming to you, doctors. That's coming to you, doctors, IJ and GH. And I'm allowed to say that. That's their names, IJ and GH. And you know, their names are being released across, you know, all kinds of, everyone knows who they are, for Pete's sake, in British Columbia. So this is a joke. This publication ban is a joke.
It is very moot now, isn't it? Now, what about the other piece, though? The justice does point out that even after the warrant was given, between that time and the time of the arrest, the CD did not remove his name and his photo. What's your opinion of that?
I believe that what we're looking at here is that the father's conscience is what is ruling his actions. He does not feel with good conscience that he can be silent on what has happened to his child and what can happen to many other children. So this is now a person in our nation saying, this is wrong, I must speak, no matter what the consequences, I must speak. And he needs to be heard, and Justice Taman, I hope, will bear that with great weight when he has to make decisions on whether he goes to jail or not.
And here we are, CD has been denied bail on this. That seems like a very harsh ruling, doesn't it?
Yes. Not so much from the perspective of what was said here on the 16th, but today, having committed to correct all of the alleged breaches forthwith, CD said, he's being denied that opportunity. At the same time, the judge is saying that if you want to have a lesser sentence, if I find you guilty in April, then it'd be good for you to clean that stuff up. Well, how can he do that if he's in prison? So I asked that he be released for a day or two. I mean, I read that people with heinous crimes that are about to go to jail for years are allowed a day off to go and say goodbye to their kids. But they didn't do that. And it's an example of technicalities and codes of law governing human nature, overriding temperance and that sort of stuff. There was nothing preventing this judge, had he wanted to tell him he can go for 2 days, come back, and in the meantime try to fix the problems. And the judge sort of assumes that somebody else can do that. I don't know. You know, you got to convince somebody on the internet across the continent to do certain things, and you're not the person who has the site. I don't know. I'll try.
Well, the judge did mention that what you're discussing right there doesn't play into how he ruled today. The fact that CD is going to remain in custody at least until his trial. But you're right. He gave a very stern warning and said that if CD doesn't do everything in his possibility to have that taken down, then that will actually play into the outcome of what happens in trial, and how is he supposed to do that from behind bars?
And he's been given a month in jail waiting for trial. He could have been given 2 days to go and fix it and come right back. I mean, he came here last week on his own free will. He's not going to flee.
Yeah, and so why did CD leave the photo of himself as well as his full name up on the funding site after a warrant was issued for his arrest?
I don't think I can answer that. I think he has to answer that. In due course that he will. Yeah.
And what else about this situation and the ruling? I know there was the 3 points which you mentioned in the last report that had to be looked at. Is there anything about this ruling that surprises you?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm particularly surprised that Crown Counsel refused, after I pestered him, to say whether or not the matter under which CD is arrested, is now being held, is going to go to trial in April. Because Tuesday of this week, he said it was not going to go to trial, clear as a bell. And curiously, the judge said, well, anybody who knows criminal law knows what he's saying. And I said, well, why don't you tell that to the public, because they don't know, and they refused to do so. That's very curious. The fact that the Crown would not commit to that and weave around it with legalese is the kind of thing which puts, so-called justice in disrepute.
Now, while CD has been remanded, my understanding from listening today is that he did file some sort of application to try to be released. Is that correct?
Yes, I brought an application 2 days ago to serve everybody for habeas corpus, which means that there was flaws in the arrest warrant, there was flaws in the arrest, he should be released. Justice Tabin initially said, nope, I deny it. And then I persisted, and I think out of abundance of caution on his part, he permitted me to address it, and of course he turned it down.
And so now we have to just wait. Will there be a trial on this matter or not?
Well, by the Crown's definition, there will be a trial commencing at 2 o'clock on the 12th of April for the balance of that week to deal with, the Crown's got to prove beyond a reasonable doubt the criminal burden that my client has breached the various orders that they allege in the way that they're going to say he did. And if they succeed at that, then we go into the penalty stage, where he will then have an opportunity to explain with witnesses and himself why he thought it was more important to get the word out to the public on SOGI and the Infants Act and rapid onset dysphoria than his own personal freedom.
We officially live in a country called Canada, and in this country, you can be imprisoned for preaching the gospel in person. You can also be sent to jail for being a father who's been powerless and unable to tell their story about your child being forever changed at the hands of the government and activists. Now, if you think it's important to have all angles, all sides of those types of stories be disclosed, please don't lose touch with us, and please help support us by going to rebelnewsplus.com. You can sign up for our exclusive content there, and again, keep in touch with us.